Who even invited him here? Look, he brought a kid. To a gala. Can you imagine? Maybe he thought it was a charity event or something. No, please, he's just trying to get noticed. Poor things like that always show up where they don't belong. Someone should tell him this is for couples only. He's just embarrassing himself. I mean, does he even know anyone here? Look at that suit, cheap fabric, you can tell from the shine. He's pretending not to hear, but he can feel it. Look at his face, he knows. The laughter that followed was soft, controlled, like the sound of glass cracking before it breaks. I stood in the middle of it all, under a ceiling made of gold and light, pretending the words didn't touch me. But they did. Every single one. They slid under my skin like tiny knives. I told myself to breathe. I told myself not to let them see. My hand trembled slightly, and I prayed no one noticed. My son's small fingers clutched at my sleeve, his wide brown eyes staring up at me with confusion. He didn't understand why people were whispering. He just knew something wasn't right. "Daddy," he whispered, tugging on my hand. "Can we go home now?" My throat burned. I smiled anyway. "Soon," I said softly, forcing the corners of my lips to lift. "Just a little longer, okay?" The air smelled like money, champagne, cologne, perfume so heavy it almost choked me. Everything glittered, the floor, the glasses, the people. I could see my reflection in the marble, a faint ghost among them. They sparkled, and I didn't. When the invitation came, I thought it was a mistake. The Veil Foundation's annual gala, a celebration of excellence. It looked too elegant to be meant for me. But my coworker, Ava, had smiled and said, "You should come, Eli. You've been working so hard on the charity project. You deserve to be seen." Maybe she meant it kindly. Or maybe she wanted to see me humiliate myself. Either way, I came. Now, standing there, surrounded by silk and power, I wished I hadn't. The music dipped, and the lights caught on the crystal glasses, scattering reflections across the room like falling stars. I tried to blend into the background, but there's no way to hide when you're the only one who doesn't belong. Someone brushed past me too close, a glass of wine almost spilling over my shoulder. The man sneered. "Watch where you're standing. This isn't the public line." I opened my mouth to apologize, but stopped. I shouldn't have to, but I did anyway. "Sorry," I murmured. My voice barely existed. The man smirked, then turned to his companion. "See? Polite. They know their place." I could hear the laughter again. Quiet, cruel. My son's fingers tightened around mine. That was it. I couldn't let him see more of this. I took a deep breath, leaned down, and whispered, "Let's go home, Theo." He nodded, trusting me completely. I turned toward the exit, holding him close. I didn't care about the stairs anymore. I just wanted out, away from the glitter and the poison that came with it. But just as I took the first step toward the door, a voice cut through the music. Low, calm, commanding. "He's with me." The entire room froze. The whispers died instantly, replaced by silence so thick it felt alive. I turned slowly, and there he was, Adrien Vale, the name printed in gold across the gala banner, the man who owned half the city, the face everyone wanted to be near. He stood at the edge of the crowd, tall and collected, a glass of untouched wine in his hand. His eyes, cold, sharp, unreadable, were fixed on me. Every head turned between us. He moved forward, unhurried, parting the crowd like water. When he stopped in front of me, I felt the room hold its breath. Then, without a word, he slid an arm around my shoulders. A quiet claim, a gesture that said mine, even though I didn't understand why. My heart stuttered. Theo blinked up at him, curious but unafraid. I stood frozen, the scent of Adrien's cologne, cedar and something dark, filling the air around me. Adrien turned to the man who had mocked me earlier. "If anyone here has an issue," he said, voice smooth and sharp as glass, "take it up with me." No one spoke. The silence stretched. Even the music seemed afraid to return. I could feel every pair of eyes burning into my back. They weren't laughing anymore. They were wondering, whispering without sound. He guided me gently toward the exit, his hand steady on my back. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. Outside, the night air hit my skin like a confession I didn't ask for. Cool. Real. Free from the perfume and gold. I turned to face him. "Why did you do that?" My voice came out quieter than I wanted. "You don't even know me." He looked down at me, his expression unreadable. "Because they don't get to decide who belongs." I didn't know how to respond to that. It sounded too good. Too easy. "I didn't need saving," I said, though my voice betrayed the lie. He gave a faint smile, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. I didn't save you. I just reminded them you exist. His car waited by the curb, the kind of black luxury that made people stare. He gestured toward it. Let me drive you home. I shook my head. No, thank you. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. No pressure. No pity. Just quiet understanding. Then at least let me know you got home safe, he said softly. I hesitated, then nodded once. Okay. Theo tugged my hand, shyly looking up at Adrien. Thank you, he whispered. Adrien's eyes softened just a little. Take care of your dad, okay? Theo nodded solemnly, like it was a mission. We walked away. The sound of his car starting echoed faintly behind us. That night, sleep didn't come easy. The Gala's laughter still echoed in my head. The sting of humiliation burned like old perfume on my skin, impossible to wash off. I sat on the edge of my bed, watching Theo sleep beside me. His small hand rested near my arm, his breathing calm, unbothered by the world that hated softness. I reached out, brushing a strand of hair from his face. You did so well tonight, I whispered. I'm sorry you had to see that. He murmured something in his sleep, something about stars and balloons. He'd already forgotten. I hadn't. I thought about Adrien Vale, the man who silenced an entire room with one sentence. The man whose name everyone bowed to, and who, for some reason, stood beside me tonight. Was it kindness? Or pity? I didn't know which would hurt more. I looked at my phone. A message notification blinked from an unknown number. Let me know when you're home safe. I stared at it for a long time before replying. We're home. His response came almost instantly. Good. Sleep well, Eli. I froze. He knew my name. The glow of the screen faded as I put the phone down, my heart beating faster than it should. Maybe it was just one night. Maybe he'd forget my name by morning. But the way he looked at me, like he saw something I didn't even see in myself, I knew this wasn't over. Morning came too soon. The sunlight spilled through the cracked blinds, cutting across the floor like silent accusations. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, I ignored it. I thought it was just the usual, messages from my sister, maybe a few work reminders. But when I finally reached for it, still half buried in my pillow, my breath caught. Trending now. Mystery Omega and child spotted with Adrien Vale. Headline, the business tycoon's unexpected companion. Who is he? My face, blurred but recognizable, stared back from the screen. Theo's tiny hand holding mine, and Adrien beside us, his hand resting protectively on my shoulder. I dropped the phone like it burned. No. I scrolled again, heart racing. Every blog, every gossip site, every social feed, the same picture. The same story twisted into something filthy. Single father uses child to get close to billionaire. Who is the gold digger Omega behind Adrien Vale's sudden outburst? Scandal at the Vale Foundation Gala. My chest ached. It was the kind of pain that didn't come from one wound, but 100 tiny cuts. I tried to laugh, but my voice cracked instead. Theo stirred beside me, yawning, his hair messy from sleep. Daddy, why are you sad? I swallowed hard and forced a smile. I'm not, baby. I'm just tired. He smiled sleepily, stretching like a kitten. Can we have pancakes? I nodded. Yeah, we can. I needed normal. I needed his laughter to drown out the noise in my head. But even as I whisked batter in the kitchen, my phone kept lighting up, co-workers, old friends, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. Ava, Eli, is it true? You and Mr. Vale. Mom, this is shameful. Delete those pictures and apologize to whoever you embarrassed. Unknown. Enjoy your 15 minutes, sweetheart. The weight of it all pressed against my chest until it was hard to breathe. When I arrived at work, whispers followed me like perfume again. The same tone as the Gala, only sharper. My office felt smaller. Every eye carried judgment. My supervisor, Mr. Lane, called me in before I even reached my desk. He didn't look angry. He looked amused. I didn't know you were socializing with Adrien Vale now, he said, smiling too tightly. Quite the leap from our little office, huh? It's not what it looks like, I said quietly. He chuckled. It never is. But Eli, he leaned forward, voice dropping, we can't afford bad press here, especially involving our kind of clients. Our kind. He meant Omegas who didn't have powerful surnames. I clenched my hands to stop them from shaking. I didn't do anything wrong. Maybe not, he said, shrugging. But perception matters. Take a few days off. Until this dies down. I wanted to argue. I didn't. I just nodded and walked out. By the time I picked Theo up from school, the world had already decided who I was. The other parents stared longer than usual. Some smiled too politely. Others didn't bother hiding the disgust. One woman whispered loud enough for me to hear. Some people will do anything for attention. I held Theo's hand tighter, my jaw aching from trying not to cry. He looked up at me, confused again. Did I do something bad, Daddy? I shook my head quickly. Never. You did nothing wrong. Then I saw him. Adrien Vale, standing by his car, talking to someone in a black suit. His presence was impossible to miss. The air changed around him, like even the sunlight moved out of his way. He saw me, ended his conversation, and walked over. I stiffened, clutching Theo closer. Eli, he greeted, his tone calm. Can we talk? I shook my head. You shouldn't be here. The media twisted everything, he said, quietly but firmly. They won't stop unless we address it. I laughed bitterly. We? There's no we. You stepped in for one night, and now everyone thinks. I stopped myself, my voice shaking. They think I'm sleeping my way into your world. He exhaled slowly, his gaze steady. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone. That's easy for you to say, I snapped. You're Adrien Vale. You can walk into fire and come out smelling like money. I can't even show up to work without losing my job. Theo looked between us, sensing the tension. I knelt, brushing his hair back. Go wait by the car, sweetheart. He nodded and ran ahead. I turned back to Adrien. You don't get to play hero and walk away. He studied me quietly. I didn't walk away, Eli. You did. I froze. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You said no when I offered to drive you home. You said no when I tried to help. I respected that. But don't mistake distance for indifference. The sincerity in his tone made something inside me tremble. I looked away. Why do you even care? Because, he said simply, I saw the way they looked at you. And I've seen that look before. I don't like it. There was something dark beneath his calm, a story I didn't know. For a moment, I almost asked. But pride was louder. Please, I whispered. Just stay out of my life. His jaw tightened, but he nodded once. If that's what you want. He left quietly, his car disappearing into the fading light. For a few days, I tried to pretend everything was normal. I cleaned. I cooked. I took Theo to school and ignored the stares. But the storm didn't pass. Everywhere I went, there were whispers. People recognized me from the photos. Some were curious, others cruel. And then, the first package came. A box on my doorstep. No note. Inside, a brand new backpack with Theo's initials embroidered on it. Then a second one, groceries. Expensive brands I'd never buy myself. I knew who it was from before I even saw the card. A single signature on white paper, AV. I wanted to send it all back, but Theo's joy when he saw the gift stopped me. Daddy, look. It has my name on it. His smile was pure sunlight. And I couldn't take that away from him. Days turned into weeks. The gossip began to fade, replaced by newer scandals. My world slowly started to breathe again, until one afternoon, when I walked out of Theo's school to find Adrien waiting by the gate again. He wasn't alone this time. Theo was already in front of him, holding something, a small model airplane. Mr. Vale got me this, Theo said proudly. I blinked, caught between surprise and frustration. You didn't have to. I wanted to, Adrien interrupted gently. He told me he likes airplanes. I sighed. You shouldn't be talking to my son without asking. He nodded, expression soft. You're right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cross a line. His sincerity disarmed me again. I hated that about him. The way his calm made my defenses crumble. Why are you doing this? I asked, quieter this time. You barely know us. Because I want to, he said. And because I can. That's not a reason, I whispered. He smiled faintly. Then maybe it's not a reason you'll understand yet. Something in his tone made my chest tighten. He wasn't playing games. He wasn't toying with me. There was something genuine, something steady, in the way he looked at me. And that scared me more than all the gossip combined. Weeks passed, and somehow he stayed. Not always near, but never gone. A check on my doorstep when rent was late, and signed but obvious. A car waiting outside Theo's school when it rained too hard. A quiet text at midnight. You okay? I tried not to reply. Sometimes I failed. And slowly, impossibly, the space between us began to shrink. Theo adored him. Whenever Adrien appeared, his whole face lit up. Mr. Vale, he'd shout, running to him like they were old friends. And Adrien, the The man I'd only ever seen in headlines would kneel down to his level, smile softly, and listen to every word. He was patient, gentle, human. The first time he came by my apartment, unannounced but polite, I almost didn't open the door. But Theo begged. So I did. Adrien looked around the small living room, taking it in without judgment. "It's nice," he said simply. I laughed under my breath. "You don't have to say that." "I'm not saying it for you," he replied. "I'm saying it because it's true." He sat down on the worn couch, careful not to break the silence that hung between us. Theo brought him a toy car, showing off his small collection, and Adrien listened like it was the most important story in the world. I watched them quietly, my chest tightening with something I didn't want to name. But good things never stay quiet for long. By the end of the month, new rumors began spreading, sharper this time. Vale keeping a secret Omega family? Mystery child possibly related to Adrien Vale? Is the billionaire hiding a lover? It was everywhere. My face again. My son's. His. The world was relentless. My phone rang nonstop. My inbox flooded with questions, offers, insults. My landlord hinted that I should move out before the press starts camping outside. And through it all, Adrien tried to help. He called. He came by. He offered protection, money, anything. I refused. Until one night, when I couldn't anymore. I stormed into his office, shaking. The building was glass and silence, towering over the city like a god's temple. The guards didn't stop me. They knew who I was now. Everyone did. Adrien looked up from his desk as I entered, his calm eyes finding me instantly. "Eli," he said softly. "I was just about to. Why are you doing this to me?" My voice cracked. "You say you want to help, but your world is destroying mine." He stood, walking toward me. "Eli." "No," I snapped. "Don't call me that like you care. Because if you did, you'd stop showing up. You'd let me live my life." He stopped a few feet away, his expression unreadable. "Is that really what you want?" "Yes," I lied. "Yes, it is." For a moment, silence filled the room, thick, suffocating. Then he took one more step closer. I could feel the heat of him now, too close, too steady. "I can disappear," he said quietly. "But tell me to my face that you don't feel it." My heart stumbled. "Feel what?" "This," he whispered. "Whatever this is." I couldn't look at him. Couldn't breathe. The air between us hummed like it was alive. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to scream, to break, to push him away. But instead, my voice trembled. "If standing beside you means losing everything," I said, "then maybe I already have." The silence that followed was deafening. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. But something shifted, permanent and dangerous. He didn't reach for me. He didn't have to. The way his eyes held mine said enough. And just like that, I knew. There was no going back. It's strange how silence can hurt more than words. For weeks, we didn't speak. After that night in his office, I walked away, and he let me. I told myself I was free, that I'd finally taken back my life. But every morning, I woke up to the same ache in my chest. Every quiet moment, I still heard his voice. "Tell me you don't feel it." I never did. Because I couldn't. The world didn't stop. It just kept twisting. The news shifted from whispers to full-blown stories. Vale's secret Omega. Unregistered family. Scandal at the foundation. Each headline was sharper than the last, each one cutting deeper. It didn't matter that we weren't together. The world had already decided we were. And they punished me for it. I lost my job. The school started questioning my ability to pay tuition. Even my landlord knocked one evening, avoiding my eyes when he said, "I think it's best you move out by the end of the month. People talk." I laughed, because if I didn't, I'd break. The next day, Theo's teacher called me in. "He's been distracted lately," she said gently. "Drawing things." She handed me a page, crayon lines, messy but clear. 3 stick figures. A small one with curly hair. A tall one with brown eyes. And another, me holding both their hands. Underneath, in shaky handwriting, "Me, Daddy, and Mr. Vale." My throat closed up. "He misses him," I whispered. The teacher hesitated. "He talks about him a lot." I nodded weakly, folding the drawing. "I know." That night, I sat on the floor beside Theo's bed, watching him sleep. His little chest rose and fell softly. I brushed his cheek and whispered, "I'm sorry, baby. I messed everything up." Because I had. Somehow, in trying to protect him, I'd made him part of a story he never asked to be in. And maybe I'd lost someone who, against all reason, might have truly cared. Days bled into nights. No calls, no texts, no quiet messages asking if I was okay. Just absence, thick and final. I tried to fill it with routine, with noise, but everything reminded me of him. The smell of rain, the hum of traffic, even the sound of Theo's laughter, innocent and unguarded, hurt because I could still hear Adrien's soft chuckle in my memory, the way he used to kneel down and listen. I didn't expect to see him again, not until the letter came. It arrived in a plain envelope, no return address. Inside, a single sheet, heavy paper, embossed with the Vale Foundation seal. You are cordially invited to the Vale Foundation annual gala, the same event where it all began. At the bottom, a handwritten note. If you decide to come, don't come as someone who doesn't belong. Come as yourself. Avi. I stared at it for a long time, my heart twisting. I wanted to tear it apart, to throw it away, but I couldn't, because for the first time, the thought didn't scare me. The thought of being seen. The night of the gala came faster than I expected. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of my new suit, not borrowed this time. Bought with what little I had saved, clean, simple, and mine. Theo ran around the small living room, clutching a tiny bow tie in his hand. Do I look okay, Daddy? I knelt down, fixing it around his neck. You look perfect. He smiled wide. Is Mr. Vale gonna be there? I hesitated. Maybe. Can I say hi? I smiled faintly. We'll see. The truth was, I didn't know why I was going. Maybe for closure. Maybe for answers. Maybe because a part of me still wanted to believe he meant what he said, that I belonged. The hotel shimmered with gold again, just like before. But this time, when I stepped inside, I didn't flinch. The lights didn't blind me. The whispers didn't slice as deep. Because this time, I wasn't walking in hoping to be accepted. I was walking in knowing I didn't need to be. The air buzzed with conversation, laughter, music. I saw familiar faces, the same polished smiles, the same people who had whispered behind their champagne glasses that first night. And then silence. It happened just like before. Only this time, the whispers weren't cruel. They were curious. Is that him? He came back. He's not hiding anymore. I could feel their eyes, but they didn't scare me. Theo's hand was warm in mine, his tiny grip grounding me. Then the music dimmed, and across the room, I saw him. Adrien Vale, dressed in black, calm and composed as ever. But when his eyes found me, something changed. For a moment, the crowd disappeared. He crossed the floor without hesitation, every step certain. And when he reached us, he smiled, soft, almost disbelieving. You came. I exhaled shakily. You invited me. He looked at Theo and smiled down at him. Hey, buddy. Theo grinned. You came back. Adrien chuckled, his voice low. I promised, didn't I? Then, before anyone could speak, he turned to face the room. His voice carried easily, smooth, commanding. Everyone, he said, I believe you've all been waiting for introductions. The room fell quiet. Every head turned. Every flash of camera stopped midair. He looked back at me once, asking silently for permission. I didn't stop him. This is Eli, he said clearly, pride threading through his words. And this is Theo. He glanced at my son, warmth softening his sharpness. They're my family. The air shifted. A ripple passed through the crowd, disbelief, confusion, curiosity. But no one dared to laugh. No one whispered this time. I felt my throat tighten, emotion choking me from the inside out. My hand trembled around Theo's. I couldn't move, could barely breathe. Adrien turned to me then, his voice low enough for only me to hear. I'm done hiding behind their rules. If they can't accept it, that's their loss. Adrien, my voice broke. You don't have to. I do. He smiled, small but certain. Because I'm not ashamed of what they made me feel. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them away. You'll ruin your name. He chuckled softly. Maybe it's time I gave it a better one. Later, when the music returned and the crowd pretended to go back to normal, people began to approach us, cautiously at first. A polite greeting, a quiet compliment, a nod of respect that hadn't been there before. It wasn't about fear. It was about acknowledgement. Maybe it wasn't full acceptance yet, but it was a start. And when Adrien took my hand, in front of everyone, without shame, I didn't pull away. For once, I wasn't standing behind him. I was beside him. We slipped outside after a while, needing air. The city stretched below us, glittering like spilled gold. Theo had fallen asleep on my shoulder, his small breaths even and soft. I laid him gently in the back seat of Adrien's car, then leaned against the railing, staring at the skyline. It's beautiful, I murmured. It is, he said. But you're not looking at it. I turned. He was watching me, his gaze warm now, stripped of all the armor I'd seen before. Why me? I whispered. Of all people, why me? He thought for a long moment before answering. Because the first time I saw you, you didn't look away. Everyone else did. They stared, judged, laughed, but you stayed standing. You looked hurt, yes, but not defeated. And I thought, if someone can survive that kind of room and still stand tall, then maybe I want to know what keeps him going. I swallowed hard. It was my son. He smiled softly. Then I'm glad you had him. Because he led me to you. I felt the tears finally break free. You don't have to say things like that. I'm not saying them to make you feel better, he murmured. I'm saying them because they're true. He reached out then, fingers brushing mine. I let him. For the first time, the touch didn't feel like pity. It felt like home. The night grew quieter. The city lights shimmered against the glass buildings, soft and far away. Inside the car, Theo stirred in his sleep, whispering something I couldn't hear. I turned back to Adrien. What happens now? He smiled faintly. Now, we stop surviving and start living. I let out a shaky breath, half laugh, half sob. That sounds impossible. So did tonight, he said. And yet here we are. Later, when we drove home, Theo's head rested against my arm, and Adrien's hand stayed steady on the wheel. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was soft, familiar. When he parked outside my building, I hesitated, not wanting to open the door, not wanting the night to end. He noticed. You're quiet. I'm just trying to believe this is real. He smiled gently. It is. But even if tomorrow the world forgets, I won't. Something in my chest broke open. Adrien. He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. You belong, Eli. You always did. They just couldn't see it. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just let the tears fall, silent, grateful, free. That night, after tucking Theo in, I sat by the window, staring at the city lights. My phone buzzed once, a message from him. We made it through tonight. Sleep well, Eli. I smiled through the tears and replied. We did. Thank you. I think about that night often, not the gala, but what came after. The quiet moments, the laughter, the peace. The way he looked at me like I was something worth protecting, not because I was fragile, but because I mattered. He didn't save me because I was weak. He stood beside me because I was enough. And maybe, just maybe, I belonged all along.